Good Sunday morning. I'm going to do something I have intentionally discontinued doing, but I'm going to make an exception this morning and break my own rule and give a little commentary on the political situation going on right now with this death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Donald Trump and the Republicans' intent to fill the position before it's supposed to be filled. But I'm going to give a brief commentary on that social situation because in general, black people, black men and women should not be as concerned about how Europeans run their empire. The empire of America, the American empire, which is the Roman Empire in a modern day state. Black people are misled when they think that they have a significant impact on how white people rule their empire. Black people today need to be more concerned about the empire that they will rule very soon. However, they should be concerned about whether or not they will be a part of the new world empire that God has planned for his chosen people. That's the empire black people need to be concerned about. And they should be getting ready to rule. Yes. Are you ready, black people, to rule the empire that God has planned for you to rule in the very near future? Yes, it will not be ruled by a multiplicity of races and nationalities. Yes, the rulership of the empire, the new world empire, God will set up according to Scripture in Rome and Revelations. The new heaven and new earth that God has planned for his chosen people. We see in Revelations chapter, I think it's chapter 7, but in Revelations we see that God has selected the nation of Israel to rule the new world kingdom he set up for his chosen people. 144,000. 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. No other nationality or race of people will rule the kingdom of God. So that's what we need to be concentrating on, not what these pagans who are under the spiritual authority and power of Satan are doing. We should not be concerned about what pagan Greeks and Romans are doing in their time of rulership that has been given to them by God. When the time of the Gentiles is over with, when Esau's time has ended, Jacob will rule. The scripture says that Esau will be in rulership at the end of the world, and Jacob will be the beginning. But let me get back to what I'm going to make a comment here about this morning here, about this Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Do you black people living here in America really understand the significance of your vote for the presidency of the United States. It's a sad situation. Sad, sad, sad. That our people living here in America, who are the recipients and victims of political politics in this country, are the least educated about what is causing their oppression. They don't know the duties of the president. Local politicians are, senators are, what they do and how they're elected. But it's a sad situation that exists concerning how this American government is run. Do you know that your vote for the president is not just, it does not just involve electing some idiot like Donald Trump in office to run the federal government. It involves far more important aspects, such as selecting who would be on the Supreme Court of the United States. And that is extremely important because that is the axis of power. The Supreme Court, the President of the United States. If you got a Ku Klux Klansman as your president, who is he going to appoint to be on the Supreme Court of the United States? And I think this is going to be the third or fourth person that Donald Trump has placed on the United States Supreme Court. And the majority now in the United States Supreme Court is I think it's 6-3. 6 conservative Klansmen and 3 liberals on the Supreme Court. So now the court is packed with basically Klan-minded white people. And whether you know it or not, the United States Supreme Court is the most powerful component of our government. They make the final decision of what the law is. And when they make the final decision of what the law is, they have the power of the military and the army and your local law enforcement to back up what they say. That's right. Early on in American history, it was ruled by the United States Supreme Court, according to the Constitution, that in the case of Marbury versus Madison, that it is the United States Supreme Court that determines whether or not any legislation that is passed by the federal Congress or any of the states is legal. That is, the United States Supreme Court is the only body that determines whether or not something is legal and can be enforced. So, you see, it is the United States Supreme Court that determines how you live, because they determine what is the law, what is legal, and they have the power of the military to back up their decisions. Yes, so when you got a Ku Klux Klansman in the office and he appoints other Ku Klux Klansmen to the Supreme Court, and if for some reason they decide that they want to go back to the 1800s and take away all the rights that black people have today, And the United States Supreme Court says, oh, that's all right. That's legal. That's constitutional. You black people better get ready to put on some running shoes, because if the United States Supreme Court determines that discrimination is now legal, then there's nothing you can do about it. So you see how important it is for you to vote on the presidency, particularly in this point in time when Donald Trump is in office and another Supreme Court justice must be elected and selected by the president. It's very important because, as I stated before, it is the United States Supreme Court that determines what is and is not legal and constitutional. Yes, it is basically the opinion of men and women sitting on the Supreme Court. It is the moral interpretation and the moral compass of the United States is determined by those that sit on the United States Supreme Court. Check this out. In 1896, it was the United States Supreme Court that determined that it was not a violation of the Constitution and legal for the government to establish two separate societies. Yes, it was legal and not a violation of the Constitution for the government to discriminate against black people and make them live in segregated, unequal conditions. Yes, that was the Supreme Court of the United States that read the Constitution and interpreted the Constitution to mean that separate but equal is legal and constitutional. That decision was made in 1896. Separate but equal. Black people could not live in white neighborhoods. They could not go to white restaurants. Black people were treated legally like dogs. Legally. They were denied opportunities, employment opportunities, living conditions, legally, because the United States Supreme Court said that it was not a violation of the Constitution to discriminate against black people in the case of Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. That was a landmark decision of the United States Supreme Court that upheld the constitutionality of racial segregation laws for public facilities as long as the segregated facilities were equal in quality. That doctrine was known as the separate but equal. And we all know that the facilities concerning equal quality never existed. That was a fantasy. Because when you see black schools during that time period would receive 20 cents on a dollar or 10 cents on a dollar, and the white schools got 90 or 80% of the dollar. So that was a fantasy, but it was interpreted by the United States Supreme Court that these Negroes could be discriminated against and treated like dogs, and it wouldn't violate the Constitution. That was determined in 1896. Now, in 1954, in the case of Brown versus Board of Education, the same Supreme Court said They read the same Constitution and came up with a different decision. In Brown versus Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court said that separate but equal was not constitutional. It was a violation of the Constitution. But what happened between Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education? Did the Constitution change? Was anything in the Constitution amended between Plessy and Brown versus Board of Education? No. The same writing that was contained in the Constitution in 1896 is the same document that existed in 1955 when the U.S. Supreme Court justices determined that that same document meant something different. They said that separate but equal is now unconstitutional. So you see how important it is concerning who reads the Constitution and who determines and interprets the Constitution. You got a bunch of KKK members interpreting the Constitution as you had in Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. They're going to say, you niggas are nothing but dogs, and we can discriminate against you and keep you living like dogs in separate and unequal living conditions, and not allow you to live in our neighborhoods, attend our schools, and participate in the American economy in any significant manner. You basically we can keep you all living on the plantations. However, if you have a more liberal, justice-minded group of people interpreting the Constitution, they would have a totally different interpretation. So it is people that interpret the Constitution that makes the decision what is legal and what is not legal. And as you know, in Brown versus Board of Education and thereafter, white folks still didn't want to obey the law as interpreted by the United States Supreme Court. But George Wallace and all those racist crackers down here in the South had to obey the decision made by the United States Supreme Court when it said that separate but equal is no longer legal and violate the Constitution. And they had to send in federal troops to enforce their interpretation of the law. So you see how important it is and how significant it is. When the United States Supreme Court makes a decision, they have law enforcement that they can send out and enforce their judgments. All right. Now that we see the importance of legal decisions, and this is another side note. You civil rights activists, Jesse Jackson and even Martin Luther King and Al Sharpton and all these other fools running around here making marches on Washington, D.C. for social change. Intelligent people don't march down the street yelling and shouting, talking about we want social change. If they want social change, what do? They go through the court system. They file lawsuits like Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education, the Dred Scott decision. When people want to make changes in society, they go through the legal proceedings. Because when a judgment is made, everybody in America has to follow the law, whether they want to or not. When the United States Supreme Court and other judicial institutions make legal decisions, those decisions are not ignored or carried out if somebody wants to. They can be enforced by imposition of law enforcement. So if you want legal change, stop marching like a bunch of clowns down the street and doing what white people give you permission to do that has absolutely no effect on the outcome of your living conditions in the future. You want to make some changes? File a lawsuit. All right, now concerning let's deal with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And how is Ruth Bader Ginsburg important to black people? I asked the question, and I have yet to get an answer. What did Ruth Bader Ginsburg do for black people? With all due respect to the old white woman who died, I just want to ask a question. What did Ruth Bader Ginsburg do for black people? What was the significance of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's election and service on the United States Supreme Court to black people? I'm waiting on an answer. I haven't got an answer yet. Everybody want to talk about she was for women's rights. But black people, understand this. It's important that you become more informed and start reading and stop listening to the housewives of Atlanta and all kind of other entertainment garbage, singing and dancing and acting a fool. As long as you live in America, you need to start trying to participate in America as responsible citizens, and you can only do that if you're informed. I ask you, what did Ruth Bader Ginsburg do for black people? They say she was a feminist, a fighter for women's rights. I want you to understand, people, that when you see white women on the United States Supreme Court, that does not represent any progress of black people. Do you understand that this feminist movement that was created in 1964 was merely a reaction to the Civil Rights Act and the now end of legal segregation? When it was determined that the segregation laws were unconstitutional and illegal, white folk did what they always do concerning the oppression and subjugation of black people. They came up with new rules that would destroy any progress of black people. When the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, what did white people do? They created a new protected class and inserted white women into the picture. In 1964, it was a strategy move by white supremacists to make women a protected class and added them to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 so that black men and black women would not receive the economic benefits that would be provided and was intended for black men and black women to receive. The Civil Rights Act was circumvented with the addition of women as a protected class. Yes, the addition of women and now homosexuals, handicapped, and everybody else was added to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to water down and prevent black men and black women from receiving the economic benefits that the act was intended to provide black people. Because of their enslavement for 400 years and barbaric subjugation thereafter, the Civil Rights Act was passed exclusively for black people because of the barbaric and profound degradation of black people in America because of their skin color. You see, the Civil Rights Act was not an act that was passed because of the subjugation of women or homosexuals. It was passed because black people in America were subjected to extreme racism and oppression. And it was intended to provide new job opportunities and social conditions as reparations of these racially motivated actions. White women have never been subjugated to the point that they needed a Civil Rights Act passed specifically for them, and they have never had a Civil Rights Act such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed because of their alleged subjugation. White women are married to white men who are the beneficiaries and perpetrators of systemic racism. White women are married to these white men and enjoy all of the economic and social benefits of white supremacy. So how can they be a class of people that are discriminated against? How can white women be classified as a class of people that need to be protected from their white husbands because they have suffered such profound discrimination when they live in the same household, ride in the same limos, go on vacations, and enjoy all the luxuries provided to them by their husbands who have perpetrated a crime against humanity. Yes, white women are the beneficiaries of systemic racism, and they are the ones that inherit all of the wealth when their white husbands die. So how can these white women be victims of racial discrimination or any type of discrimination? They're the ones that inherit. Do you know that the richest people in America are white women? Because they're the ones that have inherited all of the wealth upon the death of their white husbands. However, as I stated before, understand, black people, the only reason that women were added to the Civil Rights Act as a protected class was to circumvent and prevent black men and black women from receiving the economic benefits that the act was intended to provide them. A slice of the American pie was cut out by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and was intended to be given to black men and black women. But here we have white women intervening and taking that pie, that slice of pie that was intended to be eaten by black men and black women, taking it back to the white household. So that now you black people, you have an act, but you don't have, it's been gutted, circumvented. You haven't had, run them up, bamboozled once again by the criminal-minded oppressors of systemic white racism. So as I said, what did Ruth Bader Ginsburg do for black people? She didn't do anything for black people. Ruth Bader Ginsburg and all white women that you see or have seen on the United States Supreme Court are on the court because they have the protective status. They acquired the protective status under the 1964 Civil Rights Act that was created for black people, for black men and black women. So without the insertion of white women into the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as a protected class of people, you should have seen black men and black women sitting on the Supreme Court. For every white woman sitting on the Supreme Court, it should have been a black man or black woman on the Supreme Court. Because if Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as a woman, is sitting on the Supreme Court, logically, you should have seen black men and black women sitting on the Supreme Court as a consequence of their protective status under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yes. If you want to see measures taken to correct the racial injustice, you should have seen black men and black women sitting on the Supreme Court. And in all other positions of political and economic leadership in America. When you see white women on television in positions of power and leadership in corporate America, in positions of power and leadership, understand what you are seeing. You're not seeing the intended outcome of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You're seeing efforts made being to protect and uplift black people being circumvented, and white people using white women to circumvent and defeat the purpose of the Civil Rights Act. Yes. And black women are so silly, so silly, so silly. They think that this feminist movement really considered them and took them into consideration. White women do not see you black women as co-equals or equivalent to them. Before you consider yourself as a woman, black woman, you must understand that you are first black. When white women were marching for voting rights, they did not allow you black women to join the march. You see, color matters. You being a woman has absolutely nothing to do with elevation of black women. You still are, what they say, you still are a NIG. White women are not as stupid as black people. Let's keep it for real. You don't see white women saying they don't need their man. You don't see 80% of white households headed by white women. About 80% of all black families are headed by single-parent black women because they have been bamboozled, run them up, and believe the narrative put out there by white people that women are equal to men and do not need a man. That narrative is something that was created just for you silly black women to destroy the black family and any progress or continued progress of the black family. White women understand the game because they are part of systemic racism. They understand their role. They'll get out there and take these jobs and leadership positions because they know they have a part to play in institutional racism. They must play the role of the cleanup woman, the woman that is responsible for going out there in society and occupying jobs, opportunities, and leadership positions so that black men and black women cannot occupy these jobs and leadership positions. White women understand that in order for their race to continue to be in control of America and the world, they must play a vital part. White women play a vital part in the continued perpetuation of white supremacy. White women play a significant role in the perpetuation of white supremacy. They understand and are willingly occupying positions of leadership and leadership roles, as you see on CNN. How many black women do you see on Fox News broadcasting? How many black women? You see all white women on Fox News and in these other CNN and these other channels. These white women you see on the news channels as broadcasters and in corporate America are there because they have been alleged falsely to be equivalent to black people. White women that are in positions of power and leadership today are in those positions because they have been falsely classified to be equivalent to and oppressed as bad as black people. What a joke. White women are not oppressed and subjugated and degraded because they are women to the degree that it is equivalent to or greater than what black people experience because of their skin color. White women in no shape or form have experienced the type of social degradation and denial of equal opportunities as black people. But they have received the benefit. They have received more benefit than black people under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What a joke. Wake up, black people. What did Ruth Bader Ginsburg do for black people? She didn't do anything for black people. She did something for the benefit of white society. She occupied a position on the United States Supreme Court that should have been occupied by a black man or black woman who is the true representative of a degenerate, well, not a degenerate, but a degraded, subjugated classification of people. Ruth Bader Ginsburg occupied a position of leadership on the United States Supreme Court that should have been occupied by a black man or a black woman who are the true recipients of a protected class status. All right, that's enough. That's enough. That's all I got to say. Black people, don't get caught up in the hype about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yep. Don't get caught up in the hype about, oh, she was a woman. She was the first woman. Who gives a damn about she being the first woman? She was the first woman to steal a position from a black man or black woman yes, she was the first Jewish white woman to take a position on the United States Supreme Court that should have been given to a black man or black woman who represents the protected class that was subjugated for 400 years, and that the Civil Rights Act was created to provide correction for. All right. I hope y'all understand what I've been saying. This is a race war being conducted by intelligent. It's an intellectual race war. All right? You can't participate unless you become knowledgeable. Use that thing on your head and start becoming a critical thinker. Start reading. All right, y'all. I got to go. Bye.